Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I got a chance to play Elden Ring Night Rain thanks to one of my best friends. He was kind enough to share a code with me and wanted me to stream the game. I thought I'd give my impressions of the game as someone who loves Elden Ring and very much is a big fan of the FromSoft games. This one was a little bit of a curveball, to say the least, when it comes to FromSoft in terms of them really expanding the genre, the Souls genre, to a much more multiplayer experience. And I really do think that they kind of took it to heart when Miyazaki was talking about how much he appreciated modders out there creating co-op mods and things like that, and how they were expressing that one day they would like to make some sort of multiplayer kind of experience for their players and things like that. And I think this is the first step to doing it. But this game is really interesting, and I definitely have a lot of things to discuss because there are some really, I'll just say, weird things about Night Rain, but there's also some really good things about it. But before we get into sort of my impressions and discussions about the game, if you've been enjoying these videos, definitely consider subscribing. I'm playing a bunch of different games, from FromSoft games to Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter's definitely something you're going to be seeing a lot on this channel, but I also do impressions, reaction videos, and all that good stuff. So if you're into that, definitely consider subscribing, and if you enjoyed the video at the end, don't forget to leave a like, and let me know in the comments below if you got a chance to play this network test, the Night Rain network test. Definitely let me know in the comments, what did you think about it, what were your impressions, and yeah, let's have a conversation about it in the comment section. Yeah, so I got to play Night Rain, I think the day after all of the mess that came with trying to log into the servers. These games have historically haven't been great online when it comes to FromSoft online multiplayer, when it comes to PvP. I know some people, play PvP and it's a big community and stuff like that, but albeit some people are not into it because the online is not always perfect, and sometimes some attacks that you think hit didn't hit. So I was really interested on like how they were gonna do something like this. And essentially what happens is you log into the game, and kind of like any FromSoft game, you log into the game, and once you're there, you're at the roundtable hold from Elden Ring. It's like it's been abandoned, and it's been a long time since anyone has really been in there, and there's like moss everywhere, and characters and places where characters from Elden Ring who were previously there are replaced with the characters that you actually have access to play in this game, in this beta, if you will. And it's 4 characters at the moment, and we're going to talk a little bit about the 4 characters later on. But it was just nice to kind of see that there is some slight storytelling to like what this thing is, and I am curious if there's going to be any story attached to this thing. Considering it is FromSoft, there's typically the story's not going to be right in front of you. You kind of have to go out and search for it yourself. But I just thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was a really nice touch from the perspective of storytelling, that this place is aged and it's not what it used to be, and times have changed. But I kind of just want to talk about just more or less the user experience. It feels like Elden Ring through and through. Obviously in this game there is a run mechanic, almost like a sprint run, and you can pretty much run forever. It doesn't deplete your stamina bar. At least from what I remember, it didn't deplete your stamina bar if there wasn't any enemies nearby. Perhaps if there was enemies nearby, your stamina bar would probably run out. But I couldn't pay attention to it that much because there was just so many things going on. Essentially, you pick the character that you want to play. I really was enjoying Guardian. I definitely got to try out a couple of the characters, but Guardian, the big eagle falcon looking character, he was definitely the one that kind of stood out for me because I tend to select weapons that, bigger weapons, great swords, ultra great swords. So he's kind of like the tank of the beta of this game so far. And so I pretty much stuck with him because his ultimate attacks, which is there's these attacks that you can do kind of like their special abilities, and they get each of the 4 characters gets 2 special abilities. One is more of like a passive ability, and it's kind of like it's almost like a weapon art, kind of like a smaller weapon art. And then you have like almost like their ultimate attack, which is a much bigger, if not flashier, attack. And in Guardian's case, he pretty much flies in the air and he dive bombs, which I thought was really cool. And it was really cool for a few different reasons, which we'll talk more about. But I just really just want to talk about the feel of this game and kind of what it was like when I was playing it. So obviously, there's a training area where you can definitely test out, you know, all different weapons and things like that. And through, it's definitely Elden Ring. It feels like it plays a little bit faster, but through and through, it's Elden Ring all the way in terms of like the weapon arts and, you know, you two-handing a weapon and you know, if you do enough damage, it breaks an enemy's poise, and then you can stab them. Those who really like Elden Ring and how it plays and how the FromSoft games play in terms of the Souls games, in terms of how the combat and how you engage in the combat with the world enemies and the bosses, I reckon that you're going to like Night Rain, all things considered, because again, it is just Elden Ring in terms of the body of it. Where it starts to get kind of weird is the multiplayer component. So after you kind of determine which character you want to play with, and you've had some time in the training area, and you're getting used to the mechanics and you're getting used to the move, you get matched up with 2 other players, and each player can either play as the same character, or you can mix it up and there's other characters that you can play with. And then you load up, the timer runs out, and the game basically begins. And this experience pretty much felt like me going into the fridge and picking out a bunch of different ingredients that probably feel like they don't match, but I was able to create a delicious meal from it. So I just took all these bits and pieces, all these different things that may or may not match, and it kind of works. And what I mean is, FromSoft, they definitely combine some genres of games to kind of make this game, or at least this experience. So what do I mean by that? So the whole concept of what the game is, it very much is, and I'm going to try to describe this as best as possible, it's almost like a roguelike battle royale PvE multiplayer Souls game. And on paper, that sounds like, okay, I can't see how all that works. But oddly enough, it kind of does. Now, initially, it's gonna feel really weird, because if you're someone who spent a lot of time playing Elden Ring, and you're kind of used to that you can, you know, play at your own pace, and you can, you know, you don't want to fight this boss right now, you can fight them later on. Maybe you're, you know, going and getting some runes from a different place. Night Rain does that, but because the game forces you to get to certain locations, because, and this is where the BR, the Battle Royale sort of element kicks in, there is a storm that does damage, and it works exactly like how it does in, say, like a Fortnite or a Warzone. And I can't believe I'm bringing up those games in a Elden Ring video, but it's true. It very much works that way, and it really forces you to think about, especially if you're in areas where you're fighting specific enemies. For example, there are like sub-bosses that you can fight that actually drop some loots. The loots can be, it might have rare items or weapons, or it might have certain stats that you can add to your character. If you defeat these sub-bosses, they give you runes, and the leveling up system doesn't work like a traditional Souls game. The leveling up is, there's these sites of grace that show up on the map, and when you go to these sites of when you're there, you just level up your character by pressing, you know, if you're playing on PlayStation in this case, you press X and you move on to the next level. So level 1, level 2, level 3, so on and so on. I think the highest I ever got to was probably level 12, but my point is that that's more or less how the leveling system works. You don't actually get to choose what you want to level. It just levels up automatically for you. And I think that was a pretty interesting choice, all things considered. These are set characters that you're playing with, so they're going to have specific stats. considering that the game, at least right now, is encouraging you to move fast and think quickly, I think that was a reason why they decided like hey, we're not gonna let people decide on what type of stats that they want to boost themselves, because you also have to remember that if you die, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how that works, if your run ends, because this is kind of like a run-based game, think of it as like when you're playing a BR. I'm just going to bring up Fortnite in this case, and if anyone hasn't played Fortnite here, essentially you start up, you find your loot, you might run into another team, and if you lose to the other team, the game is over and you basically have to start from the beginning. That's very much what Night Rain is. Dying in this game is really unique, and I want to talk more about it because I think it's really important. So there are day cycles and night cycles in this game, and there's, to be exact, there's 3 cycles. So there's day 1, night 1, day 2, night 2, and then day 3, night 3. Now, I unfortunately did not get to day 3 and night 3 because this game is also pretty hard and the enemies can hit you pretty damn hard. Now, again, if you played the Souls games, if you from FromSoft, you know that some enemies will hit you pretty hard and they can damn near one-shot you or two-shot you, whatever the case may be. But if you die in the daytime, you can technically respawn. The only thing is when you respawn, your stats go back to level 1, and you basically respawn with your default weapon, the default weapon that came with your character. However, if you die during the night, specifically to the boss, because essentially the day is you kind of looting around and leveling up and finding gear and finding items and things like that. You're trying to make your character stronger and prepare for the night. That's how the game loop essentially works. And in the nighttime, the storm starts to come in, and as the storm is closing in, it closes it up into a point where you have to fight a boss. Now, the bosses are really interesting because the bosses that I fought, some of them were from Elden Ring. I ran into that gigantic, weird-looking centipede thing from Dark Souls 1. And I haven't played Dark Souls 1 in a long time, and I had to be reminded, like, hey, Chris, this is actually a Dark Souls 1 boss, and it was playing Dark Souls 1 music, which is really cool. And obviously, that was something that people were predicting based on the trailer, that they were going to add Dark Souls bosses. I don't think they're going to add, like, Bloodborne bosses or anything like that, because Bloodborne is owned by Sony, and this is technically a Bandai Namco game, but it's also owned from FromSoft, so there's a lot of stakeholders. Unfortunately, I don't think Bloodborne is gonna be featured in this game. At least I personally don't think so, but that's besides the point. Point is, if you die to this boss and your entire party dies, it's over. But one cool thing that I really enjoyed about when you get knocked, or if you lose all your health, I'm just gonna say when you get knocked, because I'm still kind of thinking of this game as kind of like a battle royale. If you get knocked, it's not like other BRs or other, like, you know, multiplayer games, like, or even like a Naraka, where, you know, you go up to someone who's down and you kind of just stand there and you do like this healing animation or something like that. It doesn't work that way in Night Rain. In this game, if you have to hit, almost like the spirit, your partner or you have to hit each other. So let's say I'm down, my partner will have to hit me when I'm on the ground, and that's how I get revived. And there's like these progressive bars where the more you get knocked, the more bars your partner has to remove for you to get back up and get back into the action. So I thought that dying, the getting knocked mechanic was interesting in this game, but that's more or less what the game loop is. You essentially, like any other BR, really, you go out, you search out for gear, you get good gear, and then you go out and you fight things. And really, there's a lot of autonomy to, like, figure out where you want to go. There's also, like, points of interest on the map as well, where you can, like, upgrade your gear, for example, or even upgrade your flask. So, like, for example, there's the churches of America, and if you go to these churches, they actually boost how many flask your, I'm forgetting the name of the flask for the sake of simplicity, I'll just say your Estus flask. It's not called that in Elden Ring, so I do apologize if I didn't get the name right. But essentially, your healing flask gets boosted, and I think you start out with 3, and like per run you can get, I think, up to 7 or 8. The most I was able to get to, I think, was like 5 or 6. There's not multiple churches in the map that you're in, but there's usually just one. And then there's other locations where there's tougher bosses that give you incredible loot. And there's also some, like, weird surprises that happen as well. There's some, like, interesting events that I'm not quite sure how they were triggered. There was one moment where I was in a castle with my companions. We were fighting, you know, all the enemies that were in this castle. And then all of a sudden, the Fel Almond boss from Elden Ring shows up just out of nowhere. He gives some dialogue, and he, like, teleports to you. And then all of a sudden, we're fighting, like, this boss. And you might have just finished fighting another boss, and now here he comes. And in this moment, the storm was coming in. So, like, in that moment, I had to make a choice of, do I want to stay here and fight this thing and potentially die, or am I going to die to the storm? And so this is where, like I was saying, the game is just, it's kind of weird, but it's also kind of fun and a bit thrilling. And I just think, for the most part, that just because there's just so many, even like that, so many like weird and wild surprises, and you having to spend time to kind of understand all the mechanics of the game, it definitely came across as just kind of a weird experience. But the thing is, as I was playing and you kind of get used to it and you start to do more runs, the game starts to get fun. And what do I mean by fun? I mean, like, once you get used to your combat and how your mechanics work based on your character and how the passive abilities work, and once you kind of understand, like, where specific things are on the map, and you kind of prioritize, like, hey, we're gonna go here, follow my lead, I'm gonna go grab these things, and you kind of go in those specific orders, the runs do start to become a lot easier, and the game actually starts to feel more fun. So really, it starts to feel kind of just like a sped up Elden Ring experience, where, like, you can kind of look around and explore. You just can't explore for too long, because really what you're exploring for is gear, right? When you go to different camps, and there's chests that you can loot, and these chests might have really good items, some of them may not, you know, may have basic items. If you go to a castle, or if you go to a specific area where there's like sub bosses and you defeat them, they drop specific loot that is usually of higher rarity. And I think that's where the roguelike sort of genre kicks in, where it's not like there's a bunch of waves coming at you and at the end of the wave you get a new ability or something like that, or as you level up. So I don't want to say that the roguelite sort of genre really, you know, makes a mark, you know, it leaves a mark on this game specifically, but I could see where some people can see that. But yeah, to me, it just felt more of like, this is like a BR, except you're not fighting, you know, other players. You're very much fighting the world around you, and you have to work with your other companions. You have to work with the other people there with you to really get a sense of, like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to survive these days, so that you inevitably get to the final boss. And I unfortunately did not get a chance to fight the final boss of the particular map that was available to play in, but I did see some footage of it, and it did look pretty freaking crazy. But the bosses were really hard, and if you're not prioritizing, you know, your leveling up, if you're not leveling up consistently, the game is going to kill you really quickly. So it's one of those things where it's like, it takes a little while for you to, like, really get used to the mechanics. But again, the mechanics feel familiar. Everything feels familiar. It's just like, this just doesn't feel right, almost. Like, the way I'm using these mechanics doesn't feel like I should be using them, because they belong in Elden Ring. Like, this is Elden Ring. But then once you kind of look past that and you kind of just take it for what it is, for what Night Rain is, it really starts to become almost like a fun multiplayer game. Do I think that this is going to be something that's for everyone? I don't think so. I don't know if this game is going to hold up for an extremely long time, to be honest with you. I think you have to play with other people that you know, because there wasn't like an online, there wasn't like a chat function, or, you know, the FromSoft games are known for, like, players can leave messages, and that sometimes gives them tips and tricks on, like, how to get to the next area, or warn them if a tough enemy is showing up. I kind of hope that they do integrate something like that, because in my opinion, I think that would have been helpful. Because again, I couldn't, like, voice chat. There was no voice chat functionality from what I understand. Maybe there was, but I didn't see it available as a setting. So it would have been nice to play with the random players and for us to actually coordinate. So you kind of just had to just be like, okay, I'm just going to follow this person, or let's just go this way. And you kind of just had to make guesses on, should I trust going this way? Should we go here? I think it's still really early just to give sort of like my overall, like, Do I think you should get it? I think it definitely needs a little bit more time to kind of show itself off. The 4 characters that were available were a lot of fun. I did enjoy them. I think the one character that wasn't used enough, in my opinion, and I don't have their name inherently in front of me, but the spellcaster, no one really picked that character because she had basically no health, and there's no FP like flask for you to use. There's no way you can get your FP back up. There were some items that you can find to like increase your FP or even get some FP back, but that's like such an important mechanic. Now, one of her passive abilities is if like you're defeating enemies and stuff like that, you can get health back or life back and FP back, but I just never found her super interesting. The one character outside of Guardian that I found interesting was Duchess. Duchess was a really interesting character. I'd argue that she was probably the best character to play with because she was really quick. She had some really interesting abilities in terms of like she can like turn back time. So like if let's say a boss did a certain move, she can actually like take that moment that the boss did that specific attack and like almost replay it, and the boss takes damage from it. So I thought that was really cool. And she can also turn herself invisible, which is really good for a few reasons. It's a great way to like, you know, deal more damage to a boss or an enemy that can't see you, or if one of your companions or teammates are down, you know, you have enough time where the enemies, they can't see you, or technically the game is not registering that you're there, so that gives you time to, it gives you the chance to like resurrect them, if you will. I had a good time with it, to be honest with you. Like, I was over time, like I think during the 2nd hour of the network test, I was actually having a good time, and I was actually looking forward to the next, like, okay, we died, but we make more I made more progress this run. And but the game at times was still really confusing and also really difficult. Like, we had to fight a boss that had so much health, and then, you know, we have to fight, you know, these 3 different knights, and one of them is the big dragonic knight, and, you know, and he has like 2 other knights with him. And like, that was an incredibly tough fight because not only do you have to worry about the 2 other knights that can do a lot of damage, they also have a lot of health, and then the big knight has even way more health, but he's also dealing a bunch of damage. I'm pretty sure eventually when the game comes out and people are able to figure out like, hey, this is the route that you should take, or this is the character that you should pick, or these are the characters that have the best, you know, they work really well together. Just to kind of, you know, finalize the video, because this has already been a really long video, and by the way, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for even watching and listening and watching my gameplay. I gotta give a big shout out to FromSoft because they, in my opinion, have been one of the most consistent developers in our current age of like action adventure RPG games. They've been knocking it out of the park. Obviously, Elden Ring was, you know, their most popular game and their most well sold, but you know, you have games like Bloodborne, which are one of my favorite games of all time, the Dark Souls series, Sekiro, you know, Armored Core, all of these incredible, you know, Demon Souls, all of these incredible games that they've put together over the years. And for them to kind of, you know, say like, hey, we're gonna take a little risk here, we're actually going to make something that's different, that's risky. You know, I can appreciate when a company that has such a great batting record, you know, does those things in the sake of like, hey, this is something that fans have kind of wanted. Let's try something based on these ideas. And even though I don't think it's perfectly executed, I think the fact that they're even willing to try something out, because listen, who knows, this may not be as successful as they think it's going to be, or, you know, who knows. But again, I can appreciate that they're taking risk, and again, the game is fun. It's just gonna take some getting used to, and I think once you kind of look past that, this is not regular Elden Ring. This is like a you know, a true multiplayer BR Souls game with some roguelike elements and some other elements as well. I think you might enjoy it, or you're not gonna like it at all, and you may never play it for T-minus a week or something like that. So anyways, if you enjoyed this video, and if you got to this part of the video, if you got all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching and listening. Yeah, don't forget to leave a like, and again, let me know in the comments below if you played Night Rain, or even if you were just watching someone stream, or, you know, just hearing impressions about the game from a video. What do you think about the game? What was your experience with Night Rain? And I look forward to reading the comments. And yeah, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. My name is Chris Sages, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.